Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today I am doing a video that came to me in the middle of a workout. Don't laugh, I do exercise. All of a sudden, in the middle of my workout, I got an idea that brings together two August events. And these are both events that I didn't talk about in my August TBR. One of them I flat out forgot, and the other one I didn't know about until after I had made my video. So first let's talk about those events, and then I will share my eureka moment. So August traditionally is Women in Translation Month, and that's been going on for a long time, and I just forgot to mention it when I was talking about my reading plan. So that one was just a slip up on my part, and I did want to talk about some books that I'm thinking about reading. But the other one, the new event, is hosted by my friend Marilyn Maya Mendoza on the channel of that name, and I will put her links down below. But on the occasion of her 4th anniversary on BookTube and in the month of her birthday, Marilyn Maya Mendoza is hosting an event called Phenomenal Woman. And in this event, she is paying tribute to Maya Angelou and inviting others to do so as well by enjoying reading books and poetry and memoirs by Maya Angelou or reading other books by phenomenal women. Marilyn is a phenomenal woman herself, and so is her idea, and so I wanted to participate. I did spend some time the other day reading some poems by Maya Angelou, and I'm going to put a link to the website that I found them on below. It's one I've used many times, Poetry Foundation. And I did enjoy reading some poems that I hadn't looked at in a long time. But today's video is actually about a different idea, combining women in translation with phenomenal women. So reading contemporary literature in translation is a relatively new pursuit of mine. I think I've always read a lot of classics that were translated, but reading newer releases and having certain authors that write in a language other than English I'm reading translated versions. This is kind of a newer thing for me, but it's really kind of grown on me in the past couple of years. And I started thinking about, I wonder if I have some books here in my collection that are written by women and translated by women, because then we have not only the phenomenal author, but the phenomenal collaboration between two women to bring this piece of literature to me in the English language. And I was thinking about just the whole nature of translation. I'm really fascinated by that profession of somebody being able to not just technically translate something accurately from language to language, but being able to absorb and appreciate the piece of literature enough to bring across all the nuances, the themes and the emotions, and sometimes I can imagine that there's different ways you might structure the sentence or the word choices that make all the difference on the impact, and you have to be able to really, really understand the spirit of that piece of writing to do that. And then I'm also thinking about the leap of faith and trust of the original author and having another person translate their work probably into a language they themselves may not be able to read, and just having that faith that it's going to be done in a beautiful way. So to celebrate the collaboration of phenomenal women producing phenomenal literature, and to appreciate my friend Marilyn and this wonderful idea that she had for the month of August, I want to share with you some books that I have pulled from my shelves that are written and translated by women that I've really enjoyed. Most of these you have heard about before, but guess what? You're going to hear about them again, and you haven't heard about them in this particular context. Cue the loud air conditioner. I'm back in the noisy room because it has better light. I'm on this endless quest of low-tech problems around the house of trying to make a decent looking video. Okay, but nevertheless. All right, first of all, a book I have talked about a bunch of times, but if you haven't read it yet, I'm recommending it again, and that is Elena Knows by Claudia Piniero, and the translator is Francis Riddle. I love how Charcot Press creates their books. This press, I found out, actually is in the UK. I think it's in Scotland. But they publish a lot of South American authors, and their editions are beautiful. And you know, I'm a hardcover kind of gal, but I love these French flat paperbacks. The paper, the quality, it's also nice. And we do have information about the author and the translator right in here. And the translator is prominently on the front of the book, which I think is very important. Both of them live in Buenos Aires, and they have worked together on more than one book. Another one, just stay tuned, I have another one to talk about. I don't know if she has translated all of Piniero's works, but I know she has done a few of them. And I think there's also a list in here of other, yeah, she's translated some other authors in the Charcot Press collection. And then Claudia Pineiro has, ooh, wait, many of her novels have been adapted for the big screen. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that because I wonder if they're making a movie out of this one. Anyway, this is a beautiful book, a beautiful and sad, sad book. Now, it's kind of short too. So if you need an occasion for reading a book, you have Women in Translation, you have Shorty September, and you have Misery May. It would be the perfect book for any of those times. It is this tale of a woman who is mourning the loss of her daughter. Elena is, she's not that old. She's retirement age, but she feels and looks like a very old woman because she has severely advanced Parkinson's disease. And it's so bad that in order to just do the simplest tasks or errands, she has to plan it all out on the timing of her medications. They give her a little window in which she can become mobile. And if anything goes wrong, the bus is late, the line is long, anything like that, she's in big trouble. And her daughter has been aiding her in the past several years as her condition worsens. But her daughter has died, and it's been ruled a suicide, but Elena does not believe this. She feels like there is foul play. And this book takes place on a particular day when Elena makes her way across the city to visit someone that she thinks might help her find the answers. And it's a very slow and painstaking journey, and it's a journey, a physical journey across town for Elena, but it's also a journey of realization and reckoning and dawning understanding of some things about herself and her daughter that she hadn't fully come to terms with. And it's a very sad, powerful, moving. It's just wonderful in so many ways. But it's not a happy book. It's not for when you need a boost, but it's absolutely stellar. Another book that's pretty tough reading, but really rewarding, is Happening by Annie Ernaux. And the translator of this edition is Tanya Leslie. They did not put her name on the front, but she is right there. And this is translated from the French, I guess, last year, maybe the year before actually, when Ernaux won the Nobel Prize for Literature. I wanted to read, I hadn't read anything by her, and this was the book I selected to read. And I did enjoy it a lot. Reading descriptions of her other works, I wasn't sure they would really be for me, but this one seemed like something that I would appreciate. And it's a fiction, but it's very much like a memoir. It's kind of, she writes a lot in that intersection. It's lightly fictionalized, but highly autobiographical. And this is drawing upon her own memory of when she was a young student and she became pregnant with an unwanted pregnancy. And at the time in France, it was illegal to get an abortion, but she is trying to find a way to terminate this pregnancy and trying to tap into the network of who knows what and who's connected to who and where do I go. And just this feeling of panic and isolation and just really not having any support, and it's scary. And she, all of a sudden, she feels alienated from the happy young student life all around her. So she's just kind of on her own navigating a terrifying situation. And so what could be more timely than coming back to this topic decades later and imagining the circumstances that a woman might find herself in? The translator, Tanya Leslie, is Scottish. They also have collaborated several times together. So here's another phenomenal collaboration. Then we come to another author who has worked with the same translator several times, and that's Eva Baltasar. I read Boulder last year. I really loved it. I want to circle back and read Permafrost, which is a book she wrote before Boulder, and then there's a third one, and they're kind of some sort of, not really a trilogy like a series, but more like a triptych, like 3 books that explore some similar themes, I believe. I won't know till I read another one of them. Her translator is Julia Sanches. Eva Baltasar writes in Catalan, and Julia Sanches is a translator of books written in Catalan and Spanish. And also Portuguese. She's worked with a number of different authors. She lives in Rhode Island, and Eva Baltasar, it just says she lives a simple life with her wife and 2 daughters in a village near the mountains. The mountains of what? We don't know. But this is a book about a woman who is very, she has a wife and eventually a child, but she's very ambivalent about this. It is a story about a woman who falls deeply in love, but when her wife begins to want a child, she starts to feel alienated because she just really, really doesn't want to do that. And she feels like she's being pressured to move forward into aspects of life that just don't really feel right to her. And I'm greatly simplifying this for the nature of time, but just Boulder's character, her personality, and her efforts to accommodate her wife's needs and desires. When you want to have children, it's a very strong urge, and you're really at odds if one person has it and the other one does not. It's a really interesting exploration of how somebody might navigate that kind of impasse in a relationship. Then we have this beautiful little book that I read just a couple of months ago, Eastbound, by I'm going to attempt Maylis de Kerangal. I've heard Maylis and I've heard Maylis, and I don't know, but it's French. And the translator is Jessica Moore. And this was a book that was written maybe about 10 years ago, but recently translated. But it has kind of an out of time feel. It took me a while to get my bearings that it was actually contemporary. But in this story, set on a train, a young man has been conscripted into the Russian army, and suddenly he doesn't suddenly want to get out. He never wanted to be in there in the first place, but he is now thinking about bolting. And on the same train there is a French woman who's older than him, who is on the run of a different sort, and the two of them have a really unlikely, well, not a collision, but they meet each other, and she decides to aid him. And it's a very short, again, there's a lot, I didn't mean to do this on purpose, but there's a lot of really short books in this pile. So this could be your whole August and September right here. And so again, just the beautiful language, and it was so short that I want to read it again because I was really tense about what was going to happen to the young soldier, and so I had to read it for plot, and then I really want to go back and read it for language because it was quite lovely. Let's take a look at the information here. So Kerangal, I want to get another book of hers as well. She's written a few different books, and then Jessica Moore, the translator, is an author and Booker-nominated literary translator. Looks like she mainly works with French authors. It doesn't say where she lives. All right, now we have a funny one. There's a shortage of good funny books that aren't too fluffy and are worth your time to read, but then they're actually funny. And I don't mean like super, super dark funny, but just funny. But one of them is The Peacock by Isabel Bogdan. Now, interestingly, this is a German author, but she's writing about an event that happens in the Scottish countryside. Her translator is Annie Rutherford. And I do appreciate all of these last few books for including the translator on the front of the book. There's a translator note that's pretty charming as well in the back from Annie Rutherford, who says, explaining the setup of The Peacock to friends has prompted a surprising number of bewildered responses. So you're translating it into which language? The idea of a German book set in Scotland and translated back into English was clearly a novel one. And then in the end she says, the bulk of my work on the Peacock happened during the strictest phase of lockdown in Scotland. Translating is often thought of as a solitary activity, but for me it was a translation which kept me sane in a constant dialogue, not only with Isabel and with my ever helpful friends, but also with the characters, allowing me to escape into a world where the worst thing that happened was, well. So it's about a group of people who go to a team building exercise in a little vacation villa. And it's this dilapidated property that has a bunch of little cottages and a main house. And the people who own it have barely enough money to do the most minimal repairs. And it's one of those things that's going to look a lot better on Verbo than when you get there in person. And they show up to do this, I can't even remember where they work, like at a bank or something, but they show up for this retreat where they're supposed to do all this bonding, just, you know, that garbage stuff that you have to do as staff development. And the woman in charge of it got foisted with the job. The original person, her boss, who was supposed to do it, sort of passed it off onto her. And after she gets there, she kind of figures out why. And just a series of misadventures occur, a lot of which involving a peacock that I cannot tell you because it would be spoilers, but it is funny. It is just really an enjoyable book. And I wish I could find another book along these lines, because sometimes I just need to lighten up, and it's kind of hard to find the right thing. I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. They failed to put the translator on the cover, but I found her on the inside. It's Roz Schwarz, who has translated numerous works of fiction and nonfiction from French, including a whole bunch of things. And Jacqueline Harpman, who was Belgian, and because she died in 2012. This was a dystopian novel that I read very recently. It's so weird and it's so good. And I'm going to speed up this train. We also have Sweet Francaise by Irene Nemirosvky and translated by, gotta dig around for this one, Sandra Smith. This book I read a while back. It actually was written during World War II, and it was written as a series. It was supposed to be a planned 3-novel arc, but Irene Nemirosvky died after having written the manuscript of the first book, and she died in Auschwitz in 1942. Her husband did as well. And it reads like a historical fiction novel, but she wrote it as a contemporary novel, and it's mainly about the exodus from Paris in 1940. And this book languished in her papers for decades, because when she and her husband, they sent, okay, let me back it up a little bit. Irene Nemirosvky was of a Ukrainian Jewish descent, but she lived most of her life in France, but she never achieved French citizenship. They would not grant it to her because of her Jewish heritage. And when the war broke out, she and her husband placed their children with a friend, I think their nanny's family, in the countryside, but they were both arrested separately and deported to Auschwitz, where they both died. But her daughter ended up with her papers. The children survived, and decades later, the daughter read through some papers that she thought were just journals and diaries, and she had never read them because it just felt too painful. And when she finally did read them, she realized it was the manuscript of a novel. Irene Nemirosvky had been a successful novelist before World War II, but when the war broke out, she could no longer get her works published because she was Jewish. We have another collection of her earlier work somewhere here in the bookcases as well. But this particular novel is very striking and immediate and vivid, and you just have to wonder what the rest of it would have been if she could have lived to write it. So I actually have several more, but in the nature of time, I'm not going to talk about everything I could possibly find today, but I want to jump ahead to a couple of books I haven't yet read. And this is my Women in Translation TBR pile for August. And I can already, I'm pretending it's a TBR, but I know which one I'm going to read for sure. And that is Claudia Pineiro, A Little Luck. Again, translated by Frances Riddle. I've had it for months, and I really want to read it. And this is the one I'm definitely going to read this month. I also have Forbidden Notebook by Alba. what's her last name? Alba de Cespedes, and the translator is Anne Goldstein. And I also have, now I've had this one for months too, Collected Works by Lydia Sandgren, translated by Agnes Brume, or Broom. I don't know, she has an accent on the E. So there you have it. I have lots of, and I'll talk about when I actually read those, what I find out about those translators as well. So there it is. Phenomenal women working together to bring us great literature. Thank you, Marilyn Maya Mendoza, for creating the Phenomenal Women event. Everybody, read a little Maya Angelou, read some women in translation. Let me know what your plans are or something great that you have read lately, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.